Hi and welcome to a new episode of our Kompetas podcast. My name is Filip Van Laenen. I'm a chief architect at Kompetas.
My name is Jørn Are Hatlelid. I'm a developer and a tech lead for web applications at Kompetas.
Hi, my name is Cecilie Haugstvedt. I'm a test lead, and I also work as tech lead for test in Kompetas.
Hi, I'm McGrath. I'm a product manager on Google Cloud.
And I'm Rustam Mehmandarov. I'm tech lead for architecture integrations in Kompetas.
So, like you noticed, we have a special guest. That's also why we are talking in English this time. Maybe you and I can introduce some more about the connection between you and Dan.
Yeah, well, about 15 years ago, we were both studying at the University of Wollongong in Australia, and that's where we met. We were staying at the same campus there, and by accident, I saw Dan's post on Facebook that he just launched the new Firestore, and I got intrigued, and well, the rest of this part is just history. So now he's here to help us with the Google Firebase platform and talk a little bit about what he's doing there and how we can take advantage of that.
Yeah. So maybe you can tell what your role is at Firebase.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a product manager on the Google Cloud team, responsible for some distributed databases. So you may have heard of Cloud Data Store, the new Cloud Firestore that we just launched, and App Engine Search as well. So there's some three pretty popular products we've got now. Cloud Firestore was really the first big project that I worked on the cloud team. So it's really good to actually be able to tell people what I've been doing for the last 2 years, not just pretending, I do some stuff. But yeah, that was fun. One thing Jan didn't mention from our university days, at the same time I was launching, I was talking with some colleagues at work about some machine vision work that Jan used to do, and we used to prank people and pretend we had a magic marker that you could draw a keyboard on the table and play it. And really it was a hidden camera that would see where hands were going to play the music. But we'd managed to convince everyone that it was the texter, the marker, that was the magic, special ink. So,
That was good fun.
So what is Firebase? What kind of product are we talking about?
Yeah, that's actually a really common question. I think that gets misunderstood a lot of times. I think it's getting better now. But originally, I think back in 2012 when Firebase was founded, there was really the Firebase RealTime product database was their core product, their flagship product. They did have a couple of others as well. Then they were acquired by Google. And then fast forward to Google I/O last year, there was a pretty big announcement where they really expanded that platform and made it the mobile development platform that we have for Google Cloud today. And so it was best known for the real-time database, but there's actually close to 20 products under it now. Everything from the pieces for server-side development with Cloud Firestore now, the real-time database, cloud storage, all the way through to how to grow and monetize your app through AdWords and AdMob integration. So it's a pretty comprehensive suite to build mobile and progressive web apps with.
Because it's a good thing that you mentioned that, because I think it's easy to confuse. Like when you hear Firebase, base, database, then you have, okay, so this is a database. And then it's actually not. There's more, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more.
I think that when me included and some of my colleagues, when I mentioned that, you just launched a Firestore, I was like, they have somewhere you can buy something now. So what is that as compared to Firebase?
So compared to the real-time database, I think the really big thing here is we've taken the experience we had building the real-time database and how people were developing mobile apps.
Yes.
It was really good. Its core purpose was to sync app state between different devices, whether it's a mobile app or a web app. And what we found is people started trying to use it as a general data persistence layer, and the size of apps that were on it was getting increasingly large. So the Firebase database does really well up until about 100,000 concurrent connections, which It's a pretty big number.
Quite a bit,
That's if you're looking at daily active users, that's in the tens of millions. But we had larger apps that wanted to use it, and you had to do manual sharding, and to do querying across data as more like a general database was harder because you had to do a lot of data duplication and do it all on the client side. So Cloud Firestore was really born to take all the experience we knew building large scalable databases with Cloud Data Store, and then combine that with what developers really loved in mobile app development with the real-time database. And so it was taking that real-time data sync and direct from mobile access, but giving it the powerful Google Cloud infrastructure that we have to back it underneath. So it doesn't matter whether you've got one user or a million users, you can use the same infrastructure without changing anything.
So if you build a small app, you can use Firebase, and if you build large, you should use Firestore, or are there any other advantages?
You can dice it like that. I think the really good thing about both systems is they both scale from 0, which is really cool. So even if you've got an app that gets used 5 days a week and then Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't run, they'll literally scale down to 0 and you don't get charged for any usage because we can move those resources elsewhere. And as soon as the first requests come in, we have a pool of machines that we can instantly serve it from. I think the really big differences we have between them, if you're doing that pure app sync and you're not looking for a general purpose database and really low latency is most important for you, that's somewhere where the real-time database really shines. So if you wanted to do a whiteboarding app where you've got a marker that you draw across the screen and you literally send every single point that you mark on it really quickly to another device, that's really small data. You're not trying to query against it, you just want to replicate it between different devices. That's perfect use case for something like the real-time database. Whereas if you want to do something like property listing and you want people to be able to sort on it or query against different price ranges or check different amenities they have against it, that's more of a general database use case. And you're not necessarily looking for those like single millisecond latencies, but you prefer something that when a lot of people come on there and you're really popular, that you don't have to worry about manually sharding that data. That's something you use Cloud Firestore for.
Right. So say if I want, for example, if I'm developing a conference app and I want to have to send a program out to the devices and the updates and that, what would that be?
Yeah, good question. You could definitely do it on both. Maybe I'm biased, but I would pick Cloud Firestore for that, just because you have more flexibility of someone who wants to sort of customize the agenda and sort by track and pull out specific technologies they care about. It will be much easier to do that with the query capabilities we have on the Cloud Firestore product.
Are there more? They have more functionality in the query language, or
yes, yeah. So much more expressive query language. Some of the big changes from the real-time database is we allow you to query against multiple properties. So everything's indexed by default, all the individual fields that you write into a document, and so you can query against them. And then we allow you to create composite indexes. So if you want to sort by a particular track and then order by time, you can do that quite easily.
So you're going to do that server side and then return the results back, right? Yeah.
I tried the Firestore a little bit, and here it's just like click, and then you're done. It's like no programming involved.
Yeah, it's a little unbelievable at times. Like you get something up and running, you're like, oh, I'm done. Now I don't know what else to build. Which is a really good problem to have. Normally you've spent like a lot of time setting up infrastructure and then working out IP addresses for everything and working out like dependencies are wrong. Like it's really refreshing to be able to just do a couple of clicks and have something running.
But Firestore and the real-time database, that's NoSQL, right?
Yes.
So meaning that you just have big documents and collections and well, a lot of people love their relations, the relations database, and especially when we're building enterprise applications for big companies, they want to feel really secure that nothing exists in there that don't have their relations cleaned up, or when you delete something. Like, how would you take that insecurity about NoSQL and sort of say, well, this is okay, or don't you?
Definitely places for both sides. So one thing I want to point out is NoSQL is a very broad term. It's pretty much saying everything that's not relational. If we want to get a little bit more specific, we're a document-oriented database. So like you mentioned, we deal in collections and documents. So you can definitely structure your data. I think that's one of the really cool things, is that you can structure your documents and collections, and you have this added layer where you can more strongly correlate your information together using hierarchies. So you can have collections under documents, which gives you a more flexible way to do something like a self-merge join against it. So you definitely get some of those query capabilities. You mentioned secure, and I think that's one of the interesting questions in modern app development, is most of the time, your data doesn't live solely in the database. So even if you have a lot of constraints set up on your database and you're doing like sometimes very, very expensive joins against the data to get the information you're looking for, you've got places like cache where that information exists that can be in a different state as well. So you're already having to think about denormalization of data to a certain extent. And a lot of time you'll find, because things like joins can be fairly expensive, people already start denormalizing for performance reasons in relational databases. So I think the big takeaway is looking at your data, and sometimes something like a document-oriented database will make you think a little bit differently about your data model. It puts the scaling concerns up front and have you ask yourself some pretty important questions that you should be asking anyway, in terms of what is my write pattern, what is my read pattern, and what does that mean in terms of how I structure my data.
Does that mean there is also functionality to program in a more event-based way? Like if I put this kind of data and something else has to happen, how would I do that?
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, one of the really cool things that I've seen a lot of usage of already. So we essentially have an event-driven model through a trigger system in the database where we hook up with Cloud Functions. I think keeping on that same philosophy of we don't want you to have to manage infrastructure to do this, and we want to give you a scalable system. So you can use Cloud Functions to essentially register for events against the database. So a particular collection, maybe you want to take a log of every document that's deleted. Or in this collection over here, you want to insert everything that's created into BigQuery, so you can run those large analytic workloads over it at a later date. So you can use Cloud Functions, register against that, and do all that server-side work that you want to do. I think it's a really good way to sort of glue together different pieces of your system in a scalable way.
Is that specific for Firestore or for the real-time database as well?
Even less specific than that, actually. It has some, Cloud Functions has some really nifty hooks on it. So it works with the real-time database, Cloud Firestore, which we just mentioned, but elsewhere as well. So cloud storage for Firebase. So when someone uploads user-generated content, you can have a hook on that and maybe do a transcription of an audio file, or use the Vision API to check for content that you don't want to allow in an image. Firebase authentication, if you've heard of that, really simplifies OAuth. You can do stuff like there when a new user registers, you can send them a welcome email using a Cloud Function hook. So there's quite a few places these hooks exist now.
So this is sort of a replacement for the RESTful API, or do we have a RESTful API, or what is this really?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a replacement. When you look at it, a lot of these underlying services have their own RESTful API that they do. I think the real nifty thing about this is it saves you from having to write your own proxy layer, that essentially where you proxy information and have some very light business logic to check authentication and maybe do some data validation, and build your own RESTful API and have all the discussions of should I use this verb, should I use that verb, like how should I call this method name? And you don't have to worry about that because it's just inherently part of the system.
Because you get the REST API on top of that pretty much out of the box, right?
Yeah.
Because when I was doing some stuff on top of it, it was like very easy. That's probably one of the things also of having a document store and the document-based data on the backend, because then you can just easily generate the URLs and everything for the REST APIs, and it's really easy. I mean, it's just
it plays nicely with a lot of the tooling out there today.
One big question is that making these Cloud Functions with the triggers and everything, that's cute. But it's not Java, right? Or .NET?
Not currently. Maybe ask us that question again later at some point.
But the thing is that it's JavaScript.
It's JavaScript,
That's
specifically
scary.
Node.js. Is it? You'd be surprised what people are doing on Node.js these days. I think, so I come from a very traditional background in my computer science degree. The courses we did are C, C++. I did my capstone project in Java. People mentioned Python. At the time, we did an assembly course. And at the time, I think when you look at JavaScript, it was the very early days of it. There's definitely not the nicest language to work in, but it's evolved a lot over the years. So if you look at the current standard, ECMA 6, we're moving on to 7, like it's actually quite a powerful language. And then when you take something like Node.js, it's not just saying, okay, I want to make browser stuff work. It's actually developing a serious server-side language that you can run that's in common with the front end. So
we're actually using it, Cloud Functions, on a project we're used as part of the ETL job, so which is like the backend of the backend, connected to PubSub and processing parts of the data. So.
Yeah, I think it's a really easy way, powerful way to glue things together, and it just has that added benefit of having a language in common with the front end development that you do anyway.
But it's like the place where you wouldn't expect JavaScript at all is like the very back end of the backend server.
Yeah, and I think when you look at places like Stack Overflow now and you look at the trends, it's actually really popular, particularly for people following that serverless model, because it's a lot of front-end development that's tied in with it. So.
JavaScript is a parse language, so would that give you any advantages instead of having a compiled language where you need to sort of build and bundle and shut down everything and then bring it back up and test if it works?
Well, I think just looking at the deployment model with Cloud Functions, it takes care of all of that for you. So you just have the JavaScript Cloud Functions that you want to register, redeploy, and we take care of moving that into all the binaries for you. So you don't need to think of that. But then a lot of people are like, oh, it's a parse language, it's going to be slow. But once again, modern JavaScript for a long time now compiles it into bytecode that it can run. So.
Okay, I think we can take a short break and continue to talk about Firestore and Firebase. Amongst other things about testing, there are some cool stuff to talk about it too. Right.
Hei! Endelig er det desember, og vi gleder oss til jul.
Vi gleder oss masse. Vi har tenkt å vise noen hjemmeprosjekter med juletema.
Følg med i våre kanaler, så kan du se på episodene våre.
God jul!
Yes, welcome back. You can continue with testing of Firestore. You can actually do some testing on physical devices. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, that's actually pretty exciting. One of the things I really love in Firebase is the test lab. So everyone knows we've got simulators and emulators for Android devices where you can run your automated testing on, which is really good, really handy. They don't necessarily get all the nuances of a physical device as well. To solve that and to save you from having to purchase all the devices, we actually have physical devices plugged into our data center that you can deploy your code on and run actual tests on the device. So that's actually really handy and pairs well with all the other products like Firestore as well. So you can deploy your tests on physical devices and automate the testing in that way without buying and managing all the plugging in and unplugging of devices.
So can you decide between different numbers of devices, or do you just have one package, like run them all?
You can sort of like select and configure how you want to do it, so it's pretty flexible.
That's really cool. It's good. So it's all the different versions of Android that still run well.
Yeah, maybe not all the versions.
No.
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome.
It's good.
And another thing that, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier before we started recording, and we talked a little bit about the environments you might have, right? So like normally you would have, I mean, that's what you were used to, like having different like test and production and staging and whatever environments. And this is also a little bit different in when you work with cloud. And
Yeah, I remember those days of going to IT and saying, I need a new server of this specification to run test, and like, sorry, we can't give it to you, what about this one here? And you end up with half the number of environments you actually ideally want.
Sounds
to
very
changes.
familiar.
Yeah, and you have to wait 3 weeks to get
3 weeks.
Yeah.
You end up having 2 developers trying to share one, and then it collides and
Yeah.
everything just explodes, and you go home and worry about it next week. No, I think one of the really good things about cloud is it just makes it easy to stamp out new ones. We literally spin up a new project and call it something -QA or -dev, staging. And a lot of the products as well have free tiers on them, so it's not even necessarily going to cost you anything, especially if you turn stuff down when you're not testing over the weekend, bring it back up. It's really inexpensive and easy way to give the developers all the environments they actually need to get their job done.
Yeah, even like if you have to do a demo, you can just
Yeah,
fire
right.
up a new environment and just run the demo there without having to, stop testing because now we're doing a demo and all that kind of thing.
There's nothing worse than giving a live demo on stage and someone deploys a new change that they know is going to break right in the middle of your demo. It's pretty much a rite of passage, right?
So could you talk also a bit about how Firestore ties into the rest of the Google infrastructure?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned it before, but one of the really easy ways to think of Firebase is that it's Google Cloud's mobile platform. So it gives you all the tooling to write those mobile-centric apps, whether they're native Android and iOS or progressive web apps. And then it ties back into Google Cloud through services like Cloud Firestore, Cloud Storage, and then gives you that sort of glue integration through cloud functions. So all those triggers we talked about where it's set up with, and then you can pull back into everything from BigQuery, Vision API, Translation API. So it's a really good way to accelerate mobile development, but get the powerful infrastructure available behind it in a really easy way.
And since we're talking about testing, so that might be interesting to mention that there you can also get crash reports, right, from all the apps and everything.
Yep.
Those kind of things you can collect and analyze that as well.
Yeah, Crashlytics. Yeah,
I like that name.
Yeah, Crashlytics, it's so helpful. Like, no longer are you out there messaging with people who are leaving random reviews or people out in the field saying it just crashed. It's like, can you look in this part of your Android device and pass me this log file?
Yeah.
That's just handed off for you, gives you an awesome dashboard. Yeah, it's a lot of fun for debugging.
That was really good. I mean, you get pretty good control of what happens and where it crashes and what version and what Android version or app version or whatever it was. It was really, my experience was really interesting to see how easy it was.
Yeah, especially we haven't solved writing bug-free code yet, so it's going to be useful for a long time.
Well, yeah, I think that might take a little bit of time. So maybe tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I'm doing web development. That's my big thing. And recently I went to the NGCon in London. Angular is hot topic. And for all I care that, every app should be made in Angular. Biased maybe, but that's what we do. And Firebase, can I leverage Firebase with Angular? Is that magic or is it easy hard?
It's borderline magic. I wouldn't say it's quite magic, but it's pretty close. Yeah, there's so if you're using Angular, you're looking at something called Angular Fire, which is sort of that layer that gives you access to various Firebase functionality. In particular, because we're talking about Cloud Firestore before, there's a layer for Cloud Firestore that's been made available. Very similar API surface, so it's very easy to switch between just native Cloud Firestore client libraries or using the Angular layer on top of that. And just in case there's any React Native people in here, the same sort of things available for React Native. It's like we love everyone. So,
speaking of magic, I mean the Firestore and everything. It seems like kind of magic as well. You have REST APIs and everything, and it just works and it's cool. And your data is there and everything. How easy is it on the backside of the whole thing? I mean, is it unicorns and magic there as well, or it's more kind of a bit more of a complex thing? What is it? Can you tell?
Are you asking me if you can replace it this weekend? If it's a side project?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Let's say that. Yeah.
No unicorns were harmed in the Firestore. I just want to put that out there.
Good to know. Good to know.
But it's definitely, I think, one of the really cool things about it. It's that simple, right? It's just this simple service you can use, gives you access to queries. It scales from nothing up to very large scale. But behind the scenes, there's actually some pretty powerful and complex infrastructure. So I've worked in databases for quite a while now. And one of the fun things is always setting up replicated databases, particularly ones that are geo-redundant. So if you want to move data between multiple data centers, whether it's a hot and cold setup or you're trying to do active-active, there's a lot of pieces of infrastructure you need to manage, all the way down to the network links itself. I've had many days where our IT department, I've heard them on the phone with ISPs and grumbling about routers and switches in between.
And the latency and all that,
So I think what's really good about Cloud Firestore is it has all that handled and managed for you behind the scenes by Google. So we replicate it not just between multiple data centers, but between regions and multiple data centers in those regions. So it's geo-redundant, it's an active-active setup, so we can have a natural disaster in, say, Oklahoma, and we can still continue to serve your data out of Iowa without any interruption of service, without any data loss. And all that replication is happening across Google's really fast fiber optic backbone that we manage ourselves as well. So just setting up a configuration like that is probably a couple of months to get it wrong, and then you fix it once you're in production. So just being able to literally turn on Cloud Firestore and have that all up and running is pretty magical. I wish I had that many years ago. Maybe I would still be a developer.
You mentioned it's replicated across regions.
Yes.
But we're in Europe now, and everyone's talking about the GDPR.
Yes, everyone is. That's a really good question. So right now we're in beta. So we're available as a multi-region within the US. But we are working on rolling it out globally as well. So as you see us approaching our general availability date, you're going to start seeing us replicated, or not replicated, but available amongst a lot of locations that we have in Google Cloud. So there's definitely going to be a multi-region in Europe, and we're going to have other locations in the US, South America, Asia, and even Australia.
Are you then talking about all the Firebase products or just Firestore in particular?
In this case, I'm talking specifically about Cloud Firestore.
Shared databases are already all across the world.
So yeah, when you're talking about the existing
real-time
Google
database.
Cloud, the real-time database is US only, and it will probably stay that way. That's part of why we built Cloud Firestore, so we can do this global rollout to give people a local option for it. Things like cloud storage is available in different locations, and if you're looking at the backend databases, Cloud Spanner and Cloud Bigtable, they're also available in a lot of places.
How is Firestore in itself developed? What kind of programming languages do you use?
Many layers of the stack, everything from C++ to Java, and there's different stuff for the control planes as well.
What would it take for me to start playing with it?
Not much. All you need to do is register for a Google Cloud account or a Firebase account, create a project in Firebase. You don't need a credit card. It's got a free tier that you can use. And then go to the database tab and select Cloud Firestore Beta, and you're up and running. You can literally start adding data in the console and create your first document without leaving the web browser.
Dan told me yesterday about a little pet project that you had. You were creating, as a fan of the old demo scene, he created actually a Firestore application on the website in less than 1K.
Yeah. I was in India not too long ago for Google Developer Days. And when I should have been preparing for my talk, I decided I would write a Cloud Firestore app. the 10 minutes I had available. And for some reason I decided, wonder if I can make something useful in less than a kilobyte. So make it the Cloud Firestore kilobyte demo. Pretty silly thing to do, but actually got a note-taking app that can scale to petabytes of data. You can name different notes, and with CSS, HTML, and the JavaScript required to integrate with Cloud Firestore ended up being about 900 and something bytes. So I'm sure someone better at JavaScript than me would probably shave off a bit more from
Maybe
that.
there's room for a challenge there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
could be. Yeah.
And you need also authentication.
Yep.
Yeah, you need to have some more.
Yeah, so it's currently unauthenticated, has security rules to make sure you put in like valid data, text field, and stuff like that. But I did take out Firebase authentication because it took me, I think, 270 bytes. I wasn't, and that was a little bit expensive for my 1 kilobyte. But maybe we can work together and get it in 150 bytes.
But how do you set up security usually?
So Cloud Firestore, there's a thing called security rules, which is a declarative configuration language. So it allows you to express some pretty powerful concepts. So first you've got Firebase authentication. You can do that general authentication, authorization style access. You can combine it with data validation, like I just mentioned, so you can enforce different constraints across your data. But the really good thing about the authorization piece is it's not just comparing the user and seeing what roles they have. You can actually do things like check data in the database to work out whether it's appropriate for them to have access. So you could have a record that assigns Philip to branch X and then automatically restrict your access to only be able to query data that is also tagged as being in branch X.
Yeah, like only the projects of that branch.
And so you can do a lot of complex things like that where you check access against the live data that's in the database.
Basically attribute-based control.
And there is also a very nifty thing there that I kind of liked when I saw it first time. It was something to do with, like, you can also do like time-based things. You can say like, okay, Philip can see the data that's been posted last 5 minutes, but not later than that, or something like that, right? This is also a very kind of different way of thinking of things, which was a kind of bit surprising to me first time I saw it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah, I think people in audit and risk really like this. Like you can really narrow down the granularity of data that people can see. So you can do that separation of duties a lot more easy than you would do previously.
So you've been visiting Jørn Are for the last couple of days.
Yes.
So how is Oslo? Is it good as a Christmas shopping?
Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to come out here.
Yeah, I was like super surprised. I gave Dan a call on Hangouts, Google Hangouts, of course. And we were sitting there early morning for him and like afternoon for me. And I was asking him, well, how would you like an opportunity to come to Norway and talk about Firebase? And he was like, sure. I'm like, what? Like, you're not going to ask your wife, or you're not like checking your calendar or anything? Yeah, I just need to check with my boss to see if it's okay and if it fits in. I'm going to India the 1st of December, and then, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, I think Oslo, December seems like a normal tourist vacation for families. So, no, it's actually pretty good. Coming from Colorado, the cold weather doesn't bother me too much, but it's actually pretty scenic out here.
Yeah, you were lucky to get some snow and.
We've got snow. We've ridden the Airport Express, trains, tram, had moose stew.
Okay, cool. Thank you for coming to our podcast. Very interesting.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.